They say every market has that one seller you trust without question. But what if the kindness behind their smile concealed a hidden darkness? They call her Madame Sweet Fish. Her stall is spotless, her fish always pristine, and her prices unbelievably low. People come from all corners, drawn to the flavor that's unlike anything they've ever tasted. They say her fish is a secret, a delicacy no one else can replicate. And each day, more customers return, hungry for more. But what if I told you the fish you just cooked didn't come from any sea or river? In the village of Amoya, Nia lived quietly with her son Kosi, both struggling to make ends meet after her husband Chidi's death. Chidi had worked the land, growing yams, okra, and cassava, but his land was taken by Obena, a wealthy merchant who had bribed the village elders. Chidi had been accused of witchcraft, and in one swift blow, their life was shattered. The villagers, once her friends, had turned their backs, offering no support, no help. Nia wandered the village in despair, clutching her son's hand, hoping for some kind of salvation. With no money and no food, she could do nothing but beg. But the villagers had already forgotten the kindness she had shown them. Desperate, Nia found herself at Obena's doorstep, pleading for help, knowing that the man who had stolen everything from her was her only hope. The gates of Obena's estate loomed before Nia as she stood at the entrance, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on her chest. The mansion on the hill was a symbol of everything she had lost. Obena had taken her husband's land, claimed the life they had worked so hard to build, but now she had nothing left. Kosi was weak from hunger, and Nia knew that she couldn't go on much longer without help. With nothing else to turn to, she walked up to the gate. The guard eyed her with suspicion, but Nia did not waver. "Please, I beg you," she said. "I need to speak with Obena." The guard opened the gate, allowing her to enter the estate. Inside, Obena sat at a lavish table, sipping tea, as if nothing had happened, as if he had done no wrong. He looked up at her with an amused smile as she approached. "What is it you want, widow?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. Nia's heart pounded, but she gathered her strength. "I don't want charity," she said, her voice shaking. "I want what's mine. I want help to feed my son." Obena's grin only widened at Nia's words. "Help? You want help from me?" he said, his tone mocking. "You're nothing but a widow. Your husband was weak, and now you have nothing. The land you speak of, it belongs to me now. I paid for it, and the elders saw to it. What do you expect from me?" Nia felt her chest tighten with rage. Obena's words stung, but she could not show him her pain. She had nothing left to lose. "You took everything from me," she whispered, the bitterness heavy in her throat. "My husband, my land, my dignity. And now you ask me for more? I have nothing left but my son, and I can't watch him starve. Please, help me." Obena's eyes flickered for a moment, but then he leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping thoughtfully on the armrest. "I could help you," he said, his voice cold. "But you'll work for me. You'll sell fish in the market, just like I do. You'll be part of my business, and in return, I'll give you food and money. But understand this, you'll never leave. You'll work for me forever." Nia's heart sank, but she had no choice. What was her pride compared to the life of her son? "I accept," she said, barely able to keep her voice steady. Obena smiled, a twisted satisfaction in his eyes. "Good," he said. "Tomorrow, we begin." The next day, Nia found herself standing behind a small stall in the crowded market. The sun was bright, the air thick with the noise of the village as people bargained and shouted. Nia, however, felt out of place among the hustle and bustle. Her stall was at the corner, almost hidden, but her fish were irresistible. The villagers gathered around, drawn by the delicate, sweet aroma that wafted from her catch. The fish were unlike anything they had ever seen, sleek, glistening, their flesh tender and vibrant. It was a flavor that couldn't be replicated anywhere else. They called her Madame Sweet Fish, and with each customer who tasted the fish, her reputation grew. But as the days passed, Nia began to notice a strange change in the villagers. They came back day after day, ravenous for more, unable to get enough. The once lively and bright villagers were becoming quieter, paler, as though they were losing something with each bite. And she could feel it too. Each sale, each fish she sold, felt like a piece of her soul slipping away. But she couldn't stop. The fish, the flavor, the power, it was all too much. She was bound now, not just to a bina, but to something darker. The market was no longer a place of hope. It had become a prison. The days grew longer, and the market became a blur of faces, all eager to buy the fish from Madame Sweet Fish. Nia's stall was always crowded, and her fish was always the first to sell out. The villagers, once skeptical, had become obsessed with the taste, coming back for more each day. But something was changing. The villagers' once healthy appearances had begun to fade. Their eyes, once filled with life and laughter, grew hollow, their movements sluggish. No one spoke of it, but the whispers started to grow. People noticed that those who had been eating the fish for longer were disappearing, vanishing without a trace. Nia could hear the rumors, but she refused to believe them at first. It's just coincidence, she thought. It's just hunger. Exhaustion. I'm helping these people. But deep down she knew. She had seen it in their eyes, the same emptiness she had seen in Obena's when he first took everything from her. Slowly, her guilt began to gnaw at her, but it wasn't enough to stop her. The fish was too addictive, too irresistible. Every time she looked at the fish on her stall, she could feel the pull of the curse. She was trapped, bound to the river goddess who had cursed her, and there was no way out. One evening, after closing her stall, Nia decided to follow a group of her regular customers who had purchased a large amount of fish. Her heart raced as she saw them walking toward the riverbank, their faces blank, their movements slow and mechanical. She had seen this before, but it had never been this obvious. They walked in a trance-like state, their eyes closed, as if they were being led by an unseen force. Nia followed from a distance, feeling a chill run down her spine. The group arrived at the water's edge, and without a word, they stepped into the river, their bodies disappearing into the water without a sound. Nia's breath caught in her throat as she realized the horrifying truth. The fish wasn't just feeding them, it was taking them. The river, once a peaceful and tranquil place, had become a prison for their souls. As each villager stepped into the water, their bodies shimmered, transforming into fish, their spirits bound to the river's dark curse. Nia stumbled back in shock, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been feeding them, unknowingly, to the river goddess Miriam, who had given her the fish. The goddess had seen her suffering, her thirst for revenge, and had offered her the fish as a way to exact her wrath. But Nia hadn't realized the price, and now it was too late. The days that followed were filled with unease. The village, once full of laughter and joy, felt quiet and heavy. The market was still busy, but the faces that came to buy Nia's fish were no longer filled with life. They were pale, gaunt, their eyes hollow, as if something had been drained from them. Nia tried to ignore it, but she couldn't. Every sale felt like a step closer to the edge, and she knew it. But she couldn't stop herself. The fish was so sweet, so delicious, and the villagers' addiction to it only grew stronger with every bite. And yet, with each passing day, Nia felt more and more disconnected from herself. She watched as the villagers disappeared, one by one, taken by the river goddess, and the guilt weighed heavily on her chest. But there was nothing she could do. She had become part of the curse, part of the vengeance that Miriam had set in motion. The fish she sold wasn't just a product, it was a trap, and Nia was the one who had set it. The villagers were no longer just customers. They were the next victims, and Nia was the unwitting executioner. Every night, she would stand by the river, staring at the still water, hoping for a sign, but none came. The goddess had given her power, But at what cost? What had she become? Nia's desperation grew as the disappearances continued. More villagers vanished into the river, their bodies transformed into fish, swimming in the depths, their spirits forever bound. The market grew quieter, the once bustling streets now empty. The villagers had stopped coming, and those who remained were too afraid to ask what was happening. Nia knew the truth. She had unknowingly condemned them all. The curse she had unleashed was unstoppable. But as the days passed, she realized something else. The curse was beginning to take its toll on her too. She had grown weaker, her once pristine appearance now faded and worn. The curse was slowly consuming her, just as it had consumed the villagers. Each fish she sold, each soul she fed to the goddess, drained her further. But she couldn't stop. The river goddess had bound her to the curse, and she was powerless to break free. Nia's only solace came from the strange visions she had started to experience, visions of her husband, Chidi, and her son, Kosi. They appeared to her in fleeting moments, their faces sad but understanding. "It's too late for us, Nia," Chidi's voice whispered in the wind. "But it's not too late for you. You can still stop this." But how? Nia couldn't see a way out. The fish, the curse, the goddess, she had become part of the very thing she had feared most. The weight of guilt crushed Nia as the villagers continued to disappear, their bodies claimed by the river, leaving only their fish-shaped souls behind. Each morning, Nia woke to find new fish at her doorstep, delivered by the goddess Miriam. The fish glistened in the early light, their scales shimmering with an unnatural glow. Yet, with each new batch, Nia's heart grew colder. She was feeding them, yes, but at the cost of her own humanity. Her once vibrant skin had become pale, her hands trembling from the curse that had taken root in her soul. The market was eerily quiet now, the once bustling hub of the village now reduced to whispers and vacant stares. Nia couldn't bring herself to leave, the guilt held her captive. But she couldn't stop selling the fish either. Every time she thought about walking away, she was drawn back, compelled by the very power that had given her the fish in the first place. "I can't stop. I've already gone too far." But deep inside, she knew the truth. It wasn't just vengeance anymore. The curse had changed her. She was becoming something darker, something that couldn't be undone. One evening, as Nia stood by her stall in the fading light of dusk, a familiar figure approached. It was Obina, the man who had started all of this, the man who had stolen her husband's land, her life, and her peace. His presence filled Nia with a cold, sick feeling. He had come not to buy fish, but to gloat. He stood at her stall, his eyes glinting with a smug satisfaction. "Madame Sweet Fish," he said, his tone mocking. "Your fish is a true delicacy. The whole village speaks of it. I have to admit, I didn't expect you to do this well. It seems you've become quite the businesswoman." Nia's chest tightened as she held his gaze, her mind racing. Obina was the one who had destroyed her family, and now he was enjoying the fruits of her misery. "You've done well," he continued, oblivious to her disgust. "Perhaps you should expand. There are other villages nearby that would love to get a taste of your catch." Nia felt her blood run cold as she spoke, her voice trembling with both anger and desperation. "You have no idea what's happening here. You have no idea what this fish is doing to the village." Obina raised an eyebrow, clearly entertained by her distress. "What are you talking about?" he asked, feigning confusion. "You have people flocking to your stall. You have power. What's the problem?" But Nia could see it. He didn't care. He didn't understand, and worse, he never would. Obina wasn't just a part of her past. He was the reason she was trapped in this curse, the reason the fish was both her salvation and her damnation. As Nia's conversations with Obina grew more strained, the toll of the curse on her body became more pronounced. Her reflection in the market stall's polished wood showed a woman she no longer recognized. Her once warm and glowing skin had become ashen, her eyes sunken with exhaustion. She could barely look at herself without feeling the weight of everything she had lost. And yet, despite the horrors that had unfolded, the villagers continued to line up. They couldn't get enough of her fish, and Nia's guilt began to mix with a deep sense of anger. Why don't they see? She thought bitterly as she watched them devour the fish. Why don't they know what's really happening? It was as if the curse had clouded their minds, turning them into mere puppets. They ate, and they forgot. They were being consumed, body and soul, and Nia was helpless to stop it. But then, one day, the unthinkable happened. A small child, one of the few remaining in the village, stood at her stall, clutching her mother's hand. The child looked at the fish with wide eyes and asked, "Why does the fish taste so different now? It used to be sweet, but now it's bitter." The words struck Nia like a slap in the face. She hadn't noticed, but the fish had changed. The flavor no longer carried the same sweetness. It was tainted with something else, something that was seeping into the village's very soul. Nia realized that the curse had begun to evolve. The river goddess had not only claimed the villagers, but had started to claim her too. The fish had turned from a tool of vengeance into an instrument of destruction. And now Nia had to make a choice. Could she break the curse, or would she succumb to it, just as the villagers had? That night, Nia couldn't sleep. The weight of the decision pressed on her chest like a boulder. The river goddess Miriam had given her the power to seek revenge, but at what cost? The fish that once seemed like a gift had become a curse. The villagers who had once adored her were now nothing more than shadows of their former selves, fading away into the river, their souls claimed by Miriam's wrath. And Nia had become part of it, just as trapped as they were. She walked to the riverbank that evening, standing at the water's edge, staring into the black depths. "Miriam," she called softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I know what you've done, but I can't do this anymore. Release them." For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of the water, the stillness, pressing in around her. Then, the water rippled, and a voice echoed from the depths. "You wanted vengeance, Nia. You wanted to make them pay for what they took from you. But vengeance, like the river, never stays still. It moves, it changes, and now you are mine." Nia fell to her knees, the weight of her decision sinking in. The goddess's words were not a comfort, they were a warning. There was no escape from this path. The fish, the curse, and the revenge, it was all tied together, and she was the one who had set it in motion. There was no going back now. The voice of Miriam, the river goddess, lingered in Nia's ears, her words heavy with the weight of truth and power. "You are mine," Miriam had said, and Nia now understood what that truly meant. She had sold her soul for revenge, and in return, the goddess had bound her to the curse. The river's pull had become stronger with each passing day, and the fish, once a symbol of justice, had transformed into a dark force that consumed the very essence of the village. Nia could feel it in her bones. The fish had changed, but so had she. Every time she looked into the river, she saw the faces of those who had been claimed, their hollow eyes staring back at her, pleading for release. And every time, she felt the weight of her decision press deeper into her heart. That night, she could no longer stay in her small cottage. The village, once a place of life, had become a ghost town. The market was nearly empty, the stalls abandoned. Madame Sweet Fish had become a name whispered with fear, not admiration. The villagers who once adored her now avoided her, their guilt and fear growing with each soul that vanished into the river. Nia's heart ached for them. She had done this. She had helped Miriam carry out her vengeance, but now she didn't know how to stop it. As the moon rose high in the sky, Nia stood by the river once more, her gaze fixed on the dark water. She had to do something. She couldn't allow Miriam to consume everything. But could she break free from the curse that had already claimed her? Nia's desperation drove her to the one person who might understand, Obina, the very man who had set everything in motion. She had tried to avoid him, to distance herself from the source of her suffering. But now she knew she needed him. He had taken everything from her, and in return, he had received the power to manipulate the village for his own gain. He had been the one to seal her fate by bribing the elders and accusing her husband of witchcraft. Now he had to be the one to help break the curse, or at least offer some form of redemption. Nia waited outside Obena's mansion, the gates now feeling like a barrier between her and the life she once had. When the guard saw her, he stepped aside, no questions asked. She had become a part of the merchant's world, whether she liked it or not. Obena was sitting in his grand parlor, drinking wine when Nia entered. His eyes met hers, but there was no surprise, no recognition of the pain she had endured. "I see you've come back," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "What do you want now, widow?" Nia's chest tightened as she spoke, her voice raw with the weight of her words. "I want you to help me stop the fish. I want you to help me end this curse." Obena raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a smirk. "Help you? After everything you've done? You are the one who unleashed this chaos. You are the one who sold the fish. I'm not the one who's suffering." Nia's heart burned with anger at his words, but there was something deeper now, something that no longer sought vengeance, but only a way to stop the destruction. "You don't understand," she whispered, her eyes filled with tears. "Fish, it's taking them all. The villagers, the ones who trusted me, they're disappearing. Every soul that eats the fish is claimed by the river, turned into a fish, trapped forever." Obena leaned back in his chair, his face a mask of indifference. "So what? They're just villagers. Who cares if they're turned into fish? They were weak. They trusted you, yes, but you're the one who made this happen." His words struck her like a physical blow. It was true. She had made the decision, and now the villagers were paying the price. But deep down, Nia knew there was more to it. Miriam had been using her from the start, manipulating her desire for revenge and twisting it into something dark and powerful. "I want to undo this," she said, her voice shaking with desperation. "Please, Obena, I need your help." Obena stared at her for a long time, then stood slowly, walking over to the window. "There's nothing you can do," he said flatly. "Once Miriam has claimed something, it's hers. You're tied to the river now, just like I am. You always will be." Obena's words left Nia cold, but there was no time to waste. If she couldn't break the curse with his help, then she would have to find another way. As she turned to leave, Obena's voice stopped her. "If you're so desperate, there's one thing you could try," he said, his tone darker now. "But it won't be easy. The river goddess isn't just any spirit. She's ancient, powerful, and vengeful. If you want to break the curse, you'll have to face her." Nia turned back, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What do you mean?" she asked. "You want me to face Miriam?" Obena nodded, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Yes, the only way to break the curse is to confront her, to undo what you started. But be warned, she won't let you go easily. The power she gave you comes at a price, and that price is you." The weight of his words settled on Nia like a stone. Could she face the goddess? Could she stand before the very force that had given her the power of vengeance, the power that had consumed her soul? There was only one way to find out, and that meant walking into the river and facing Miriam head-on. But deep down, Nia knew that this might be her final chance. There was no turning back now. The night was dark, with a chill that hung in the air as Nia stood at the edge of the river. The moonlight glinted off the water, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward her, beckoning her to enter. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of fear and determination flooding her veins. She had no choice now. The curse had to be undone. The river goddess Miriam was waiting for her. Nia stepped into the cold water, her feet sinking into the mud. She could feel the weight of the water surrounding her, pulling her deeper, as though the river itself was alive, aware of her presence. The air grew thick with energy, and a deep voice echoed through the night, vibrating the very ground beneath her. "You've come, Nia," Miriam's voice said, low and thunderous, carrying a strange mix of power and sadness. "Did you think you could escape your fate?" Nia's legs shook, but she steadied herself, raising her head to face the river's depths. "I didn't come to escape," she replied, her voice strong despite her fear. "I came to end this. I came to break the curse, to free the villagers and myself." Miriam's laugh echoed, haunting and cold. "You think you can undo what has been set in motion? You have fed them, Nia, fed them with your vengeance, and now you wish to take it all back?" The river began to churn, its waters rising higher, as if in protest. "You are tied to me, to the vengeance you sought. You cannot escape what you have created." The waters surged around her ankles, then her knees, as if the river itself was trying to swallow her whole. But Nia didn't falter. She knew the goddess was powerful, but she had a power of her own, now the power to choose. "I made a mistake," Nia shouted into the churning water, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I was blinded by my grief, by my need for revenge. But I've seen what it's done. I've seen the pain, the destruction, and I won't let it continue." The river goddess's form began to materialize in the water before her, rising like a towering figure, her eyes glowing with a fierce light. Her voice boomed, shaking the very air. "You have no power here, Nia," Miriam declared. "You chose this path. You became my instrument, my vessel. There is no undoing it." Nia's eyes locked with the goddess's, the fear that had once paralyzed her replaced by something stronger. "You are wrong," she said, her voice firm. "I chose vengeance, but I choose to end it now. I will not allow you to claim any more lives, no more fish, no more souls." With that, she stepped forward, plunging deeper into the river, pushing against the current, her body trembling with the weight of her decision. The water rose higher, now at her waist, the river goddess, towering above her, her power overwhelming. Miriam's form shifted and writhed in the water, a swirling mass of darkness and light. "You cannot win, Nia," the goddess hissed, her voice a storm of fury. "You think you can defy me? You are nothing. You are just a woman who was foolish enough to seek revenge." But Nia's resolve was unshakable. She could feel the curse pulsing in the water, a dark energy trying to pull her under. But she was done with it. She had been the one to set this in motion, and she was the one who would stop it. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, summoning the strength within her. The strength to free herself, the village, and the souls trapped in the river. She reached out her hand, and for the first time, she felt the power of the goddess flow through her, not as a weapon of vengeance, but as a force of release. "I am not your instrument anymore, Miriam," she whispered, her hand glowing with the energy she had reclaimed. "I will not be your pawn." The river began to still, the dark waters losing their grip on her. The goddess's form flickered, her anger flaring. "You think you can break free?" Miriam spat. "You are mine. You will always be mine." But Nia stood tall, her heart filled with light. "No, I am free. I choose peace." With a final powerful push, Nia released the energy she had been holding back, her hand glowing with a brilliant light. The river rippled, the water swirling around her as Miriam screamed, her form disintegrating into the light. The darkness that had consumed the village, the curse that had claimed so many lives, began to fade away. The water calmed, and the river goddess vanished into the depths, her power broken. Nia collapsed to her knees, the weight of the battle falling from her shoulders. The curse was lifted. The souls of the villagers, once trapped in the river, were freed. The fish, no longer tainted with darkness, began to swim freely in the river once more. As the sun rose over the horizon, Nia felt the warmth of the light on her skin. She had faced the darkness, and she had won. But as the village began to heal, as life slowly returned to normal, Nia knew one thing. The price of vengeance had been paid. The river, once a source of destruction, was now a symbol of redemption. And Nia, the woman who had sought revenge, had become the one to bring peace. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you liked the story. If you did, don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. What would you have done if you were in Nia's place? Do you think she went too far? Don't forget to subscribe for more exciting African stories. And click the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. Until then, take care of yourself. See you next time.